Hello. The Divine Code reading for April 20th, pages 635 and 636. We're in the chapter. We're now finishing up the chapter, and then we'll continue with the new chapter. The chapter we're currently in is the laws of saving oneself or one's property at the expense of another's money and taking the law into one's own hands. So, topic number 19. If a person filled up the yard of another person with his barrels of wine or oil or the like, without the consent of the yard owner. So we're in the middle of looking at different scenarios where a person places their property or places their items on another person's property, on another person's land. And in the first scenario, they're negotiating what to do, and the person does it outside of what was agreed to. Maybe the other person did not agree to the person using the person offers to rent it for $10, their land for $10 to store his items, and instead the owner wants $20. So the person places so the owner says, no, we're not going to do this. So the person with the product places their stuff on the land anyway. Or if the person agrees to the $20, but later on only pays $10. So the person who owns the storage land says, no, I'm not agreeing to this. In those cases, they can place the items off of the property. If it's a rental area that was not discussed, the person just brought the stuff in, it's a rental area. In that case, the owner of the rental area has to work with the person that's brought their items in. And they inform the person ahead of time, you have to get your stuff off of the property because it's a rental property to begin with, so people do bring their things in there. And now this third scenario is where the person just shows up with, it's not a rental area, and he didn't discuss it ahead of time with the owner. It's just a regular open yard area, but it's not rented out normally to people. And he leaves his stuff there. He just dumps his stuff there with the idea of storing it on the yard. That's the third scenario, which is what we're looking at here. The yard owner may enter and exit his yard, and he need not care. He need not take care not to damage the barrels. So in this case, the person that the person that owns the yard, who owns the yard is being used by this other person for storage. He can use the yard like he normally does, and he doesn't have to worry about damaging. It's not his responsibility to worry about damaging the objects that were left there without his permission, without his awareness. But he is not permitted to damage them intentionally. So he can conduct his normal business in the yard, whatever his normal business is. But he can't go out of his way to damage the items. If they inadvertently get damaged because he's doing his normal activity, that's the owner of the object's concern. It's got nothing to do with him. But he can't go out of his way and do something unusual to cause damage to the objects. Rather, he may remove them into the street. And Shokanor Karav, Laws of Borrowing, Topic 9. For although the owner of the barrels transgressed the prohibition by putting them on his property, this does not allow the yard owner to steal or damage them in return. So the guy cannot say, the guy who owns the yard can't say, oh, that's nice, somebody just dropped off a bunch of barrels of oil on my yard. I guess it's a present to me. He can't just take it for himself. And he can't get angry and damage the barrels. He has to take the barrels and place them into the common area. And it's not clear if the person hired workers In either of the other two scenarios, that's dealing with produce, and it's not clear if produce is different from barrels of oil. Um, or they're just random examples. It's not clear in the writing here in the Divine Code what the significance is between produce and barrels. However, in the case of the produce, we're told that he can hire workers and then pay the workers from the produce what they're moving. He can say, hey, you're going to move these 100 barrels of apple. You're going to move 100 bushels of apples, and you get to take home 2 of them for your trouble. He's hiring the person and paying them with the produce. In this case, let's say there's 100 barrels of oil. Can he give the 100? Can he give 2 barrels of oil to the worker that's moving them? We're not told. I would assume yes, but it's not. It may be a different situation. It's not clear at this point. Topic number 20. There is no obligation to return an envelope sent with a return stamp if the receiver has no intention of replying. Rather, he may just put it in an ownerless place or throw it away. As responsa of Marosham, Volume 2, Chapter 210. So, if this happens all the time. Somebody wants the person wants to reply, therefore he puts a self-addressed stamped envelope for the reply. The person who receives it is not required to do anything with it because he didn't ask for it. If he asked for it, then he may be under requirements to do whatever he said he would do with it. But if it just shows up as like junk mail, there's no requirement to send it back. Or he may use it as for his own needs. So if it's got a stamp on it, he sends a stamped envelope. It wasn't solicited, it wasn't asked for, and he receives it. He can use it. He can use the stamped envelope for whatever he needs to use it for. Now, normally today it's coded in such a way that only good if it goes back to the person it's originally addressed to. But if a person were to send out a stamped envelope, there's no obligation to use it the way the person said to use it. The person that received it in the mail can use it any way he wants. Likewise, if one receives a catalog in the mail, there is no obligation to accept it, return it, or safeguard it. And this goes into the area of junk mail. I mean, people receive junk mail. It's a normal thing in America, and I assume elsewhere, where people will mail their flyers, they'll mail the coupons, they'll mail catalogs, whatever. There's no obligation on the person who received it, assuming they didn't ask for it. There's no obligation for the person to do anything with it. You might receive what do you call them? Easter seals made a big deal out of this, where they would send out a page filled with little stickers, and people could put the stickers on their mail. It may look pretty, and the idea was that the person would feel the need to write a check, for the privilege of putting those stickers on things. However, if they didn't ask for it, there's no obligation to write the check, and they can use the stickers if they want to without paying for them, because the company just sent it to them. And other companies have picked up on this idea, and they also do this. They'll send out stuff. They'll send out samples, and there's no obligation to do anything with it. You can use the sample. The person can use whatever's sent to them in the mail, as long as they didn't ask for it, and they don't have to pay for it. Since those who send such articles in the mail know about this fact, they have essentially declared any such items ownerless, and they may take and one may take them for free if he so wishes. So the owner never requests payment. As the owner never requests payment, since the sender declared the items ownerless, the receiver is not responsible at all for the item being sent. So he does not have to safeguard or return the item. So it's sort of understood that items that are just sent out, you know, even if it's a full, even it's not a sample, it's a full item. The person wants someone to try something and then send it back, or either buy it or send it back. The person that receives it is not under any obligation to send it back. That's not the normal, unless it's the normal business practice in the location. But if it's not the normal business practice within the location, you just follow whatever the custom is for that locale. And generally, businesses will realize they can't just send stuff out and expect people to buy it. It doesn't work that way. Chapter number 5, theft incurred by false measurements and the prohibition of cheating or misinforming another person. Topic number 1. A seller who knowingly or neglectingly weighs merchandise for a buyer with scales that are faulty, according to fixed measurements of the government, whether in dry or liquid measurements, or according to that which is agreed upon between two parties, or in a measurement of land, is a thief. This applies to cases of an avoidable difference in the measured land due to a person's deceit or negligence. However, no measurement can be truly exact because every measuring instrument has an inherent limit in the smallest fraction of measurement unit that can be resolved on the measurement scale. When a buyer agrees that a certain measuring instrument will be used, he implicitly agrees that he accepts the inherent limit of its accuracy. The fractional deviation of an honest measurement from the true value will vary randomly over multiple measurements. Something larger or smaller, sometimes larger and sometimes smaller. And each party in the sale implicitly agrees to accept either the small loss or benefit that will randomly come to him from the measurement device that they have agreed to use. So we have to be honest with our measurements, and within the accuracy of whatever's being used to do the measurement, it's a necessity to be honest, and it's an agreement that the buyer and seller goes into. It's something that the government or society recognize. Normally, it's governments that have these standards clearly stated. There's a bar in France that shows the length of a meter, and there's atomic clocks, and you know, there's all sorts of things that create accurate measurement, and we have to follow, and we have to be consistent with what we're doing. If everybody's consistent, then the measurements follow from one person to the next, and everything's acceptable. We have to follow whatever's acceptable within that society. If one sells prepackaged merchandise by weight or volume, if one sells prepackaged merchandise by weight or volume, he should show the net weight or volume, which excludes the tear weight or empty volume in the packaging. It is understood that the cost of the packaging is included in the profit he makes in his sales. So if he's selling a pound of coffee, he has to have 16 ounces of actual coffee. Now, there can be a can. The can might weigh a couple ounces also. He cannot add the couple ounces of weight of the can into what he's calling a pound of coffee. Now, he can also sell things by volume. That's where it gets a little bit trickier, because the coffee might, if you have it fluffed up, it's going to be a certain size. And if the person taps the can, it settles, and then there's empty space, and the person thinks they're being cheated. Therefore, it has to be a clear how the measurement is occurring. So in the case of something like coffee, ground coffee, where it's done by weight, the person would have to take the weight without the weight of the can or without the weight of a bag, and say this is what, so they know what they're buying. Now, the cost of the package is factored in. So if it's something more expensive, like a can, that cost of the can has to be factored into what they're charging for the product. And they're being told, unless they're selling the can separate, which is another possibility. Otherwise, it has to be in the price of a pound of the product. And if it's a plastic bag, a cheap bag, it's less expensive, and that would also be factored into the cost of the product. So the person is not buying the can; they're not buying the bag; they're buying the product that's inside of it, and that's what they care about, and that's what they're being told the price is for. Likewise, I mean, if you're talking about volume, like bushels and all that, it's a little bit trickier, because again, it depends on whether something, you can have a bushel of apples that they're placed inside the bushel a certain way, and there's a certain number of apples. But if the bushel's shaken up a little bit more and the things are pushed together in a different way, then there might fit more apples in. So there has to be a standard that everybody agrees on of how these measurements are figured. See, Rambam laws of theft, 7, 1, and 9. Shulchan Aruch Harav laws of measurements and weights, topics 1 and 2. See Minhag Chinuch commandment 258, which states that it is clear that Gentiles are included in this prohibition as well as Jews, and are liable for transgressing it. So these laws they apply, these are clear halakkas within Jewish law. There's a halakha not to apply false weights and measures. There's another halakha within the Jewish system of not owning a scale that has false measurements. The Jew would not be permitted to own a scale if they just keep it in the closet and never use it, but they own a scale that had false weights and measures. That's not permitted in Jewish law. It's a little different in the Noahide law, the non-Jewish law, that it may be permitted to own it as long as you don't use it, but it's not a good idea. Either way, it's not a good idea to own such a thing, because they may inadvertently or may be led to use it. So definitely what we're talking about right now is we're not allowed to use false weights and measures. Even if the difference is less than the value of a pruta, the perpetrator is still a thief. And that's Rambam laws of theft 8:7, Shulchan Aruch Kosher Mishpat 231:6, and Sefer Chinuch commandment 258, Shulchan Aruch Harav laws of measures and weights, topics 1 and 2. So a theft does not, the whole idea of a pruta, that's the measurement within Jewish law. Jewish law has ideas that there's minimum amounts that a person is held liable for. If it's below that amount, the Jew would not be punished for, or in order to do certain things, there has to be above a certain amount in order for it to be considered that they did something. It doesn't. That's for the purpose of understanding the court, whether or not they meet a certain standard. However, even if it's not the pruta, and that counts for a Jew also, it would still be considered theft if a Jew were to steal less than a pruta. And it's still considered theft. A pruta is the minimum measurement. It's like a few pennies. It's the minimum measurement that anybody would care about. Within Jewish law, the person does not go to court unless it's above that amount. But it's still theft. Even if it's below that amount, it's still considered theft. And in the non-Jewish law, the Noahide laws, we don't have pre-established measurements, either in the Torah or from the rabbis. And therefore, the idea is that we don't have measurements. Well, actually, we do have measurements. It's whatever the local government decides is the measurement. We don't have pre-established measurements the way the Jewish people do. We have local governments decide at what point they're gonna bother with something. But even if it's less than that amount, it's still considered theft and it's still prohibited. It's just that the courts are not going to get involved unless it's above that amount. So that's what it's saying there. He is obligated to return the amount or value of the produce of the amount or value of the purchase that was stolen from the buyer. So if he mistakenly, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, if he mistakenly charged the coffee and the can, and he was only supposed to charge for the coffee, and he added the weight of the can with the coffee, or even the weight of the bag, which is very minimal, but if he added the extra weight that he should not have done, he has to reimburse the customer for that extra charge. And likewise, anything of this type would be, anytime there's a mistake in the measurement, one way or another, it has to be reimbursed and made right. Even if it was done mistakenly by the seller, he must return the amount overpaid, and this will be explained later in topic 12. So that'll be in several days. When we get to topic 12, it'll go into more detail. It is clear from the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch that he must return even a small amount overcharged in this way. So even if it's, let's say the minimum amount is that the courts are going to get involved is $1. If it's less than $1, the courts don't want to deal with it. The police aren't going to even look at it. Now, actually, weights, there's in the city of Chicago, there's a Department of Weights and Measures that come out to stores, and if it's even a penny off, they're gonna write a ticket, or maybe not a penny, but a couple pennies. They'll write a ticket, whatever the amount is that the courts are gonna get involved. Even if it's less than an amount, it's still required to make it to fix the mistake, to reimburse the mistake that occurred. This is because in buying or selling, the Torah is extremely exacting about measuring equipment, and one must return even the smallest amount obtained by this means of transgression. So in this case, it's the anything that's above the measurements of the measuring item. If it could be a old-fashioned spring scale that might be off by, it might go one way or another with 1 ounce. It's very accurate for pounds, but for ounces, it's not as accurate. So it sometimes goes up or down. In which case, we're not gonna require that to be fixed. That to be returned. But if it was beyond the measurement, beyond the range, if it's beyond the accuracy of the measurement, I mean, they see the scale can tell the difference, then it has to be returned. That's the threshold there. Thank you.